Hey everyone, welcome to session number 1 with Aaron Fifield. If you've been around the trading Twitter sphere for more than about 5 minutes, you've probably heard of Aaron, or at least his podcast, Chat with Traders. Aaron grew up without any exposure to trading and no community that he could learn it from, so he did what every successful young person these days does and built his own. Aaron talks to traders from all across the world to learn the best tactics and lessons that he can in order to become a better trader himself. What does he learn from it? You'll just have to watch and find out. Hey Aaron, how's it going?
Good, Jacob. Pleased to be here.
Cool. So, just to kind of jump into things, can you just kind of explain a little bit about your history, what attracted you to trading, kind of where you started and where you're kind of working towards now?
Absolutely. So, the way I got into trading was probably not too unsimilar to how others get into trading in the typical sense. Well, I guess for me, I had just bought an investment property. I was about 20 years old, and I was like, okay, so I've bought a property. I'm sort of getting into the property game a little bit. Wealthy people tend to have property, and they're also involved in the share market. So I was like, I need to find out more about this share market thing. I knew nothing about trading or investing. No one in my family or friends had any involvement with it, so I had no exposure at a younger age. So I was like, obviously I don't know what I'm doing. I need to get some information on that before I, go putting any money on the line. Anyway, found a seminar that was happening in a couple of weeks' time in Brisbane, Australia here. Went along to it, and the presentation at the seminar was talking about the methods of William Gann. So for those who are unfamiliar with Gann, he was sort of a Wall Street legend in the early 1900s. He's since obviously passed away quite a while ago. But what they spoke about at this seminar were his methods, and that's kind of what this company taught. So, I just ran with that. I was like, this sounds good. I'm keen to find out more. So went ahead with that. I purchased some of the studying material that they had. I really pulled it apart. I think I gave it a fairly good crack. I studied that I studied this GAN material for a couple of years. I studied GAN's material, and I also studied, I studied the course material, and I also actually studied some of GAN's material that he wrote. And for anyone who has ever read his material will know it's pretty tough going. It was written in the early 1900s, and it's very hard reading. But anyway, I pulled those books apart and I read them multiple times. And I don't use any of Gann's methods in my trading to this day. Although I don't really regret putting in that time and studying his methods, because it did give me a really good underlying foundation for technical analysis, and just being able to look at a chart and kind of get a sense of what's going on. I gave it a really good shot. I was also charting things by hand. I don't think many people actually have done that. I used to have, when I first got into trading, I think I had two, maybe three. I think I had two like 3 to 4 meter long hand-drawn charts clipped up on my wall. I thought it was the coolest thing. But I'd update, draw each bar on every day. And, I made some pretty good trades off that. But, that's essentially my intro to trading in a nutshell. That's the first couple of years at least.
Like, it kind of reminds me of people who study like Napoleon Hill for business, the whole Think and Grow Rich, and those really kind of, I don't want to say esoteric books, but that really kind of early English feel almost, where it almost seems more like a textbook than a more modern novel.
Yeah, very heavy reading, that's for sure. But there's some of the books actually that he did write. I'd probably even still recommend them. He had some shorter books, and just like the underlying trading principles, I think are still very relevant for traders today. People often reference Jesse Livermore's autobiography. What's that called? It's slipping my mind at the moment. But I guess it's kind of in a similar caliber to that book.
Well, so was it more about just kind of how the markets work at a higher level, or was it more detailed than that?
I think it's probably safe to say it covered both ends of the
Okay.
spectrum. Yeah.
Okay, so that's really cool. And wow, charting by hand. What was it? Did you find that like particularly useful as you were practicing? Was it like maybe by drawing it on, you kind of sunk in the information a little bit better?
Yeah, I think it was. Um, yeah, I think it was a worthwhile exercise, and it's something I've actually thought about still doing to this day. Is just having one market that I really want to follow. Maybe it's the SPY or something like that. It's cool in the sense because when you're looking at a chart on a computer, you can scale it, you can change the way it looks, like you can do everything. You can alter it in any way you want. When you've actually got something that's pen on paper, there's no change in it. So the scale is always the same. I think that's quite valuable. But I'm not saying that everyone should go out there and start hand charting. I think it's pretty old school. But I think at the time it was a worthwhile exercise, and it made sure that I knew how to actually draw, a bar chart. I actually understood what a chart was, what it was, the information I was putting on there. Because I was also actually was updating the bars each day. I was also drawing a 2-day swing overlay, which is actually something I picked up from Gann's material, which I think is still I kind of incorporated into my trading today still. So I was drawing that on top of the chart as well, which gave me a really good understanding of how these kind of, I don't know if it's an indicator, I kind of would rather call it an overlay, but how they were actually drawn instead of just pulling up software and putting it on, just clicking the button. So, yeah.
Okay, I mean, that makes sense. It's kind of like doing math by hand rather than using a calculator, so you actually understand how you got to whatever conclusion you make at the end.
Yeah, that's a good way of saying it.
Okay, so you kind of mentioned your trading style in there. What is your trading style? What do you prefer?
Okay, well, this could open a whole nother can of worms, but um, I guess from a high level, I'm a swing trader by nature. So that could be holding positions anywhere from a couple days up to a couple weeks at a time. Um, Mainly the patterns that I focus on trading, I like to see horizontal levels of support and resistance, and I like to see consolidation around those areas, and either the price either breaking out to the upside or breaking out to the downside, and trading those moves. Um, but as of last year, being 2015, I was very open with this, on the Chat with Traders podcast, that I wasn't actively trading that much. I'd kind of taken a slightly different direction and towards actually more in the direction of quantitative slash algorithmic trading. So I guess that's how I have been trading, and now I've kind of more moved in this direction of algorithmic trading, which is, of course, required me to start learning how to program and code and all those sorts of fun things.
Okay, and I definitely kind of want to touch on that here again in a little bit, but before I open up that whole separate can of worms there, as you said, what's kind of been the determining factor for you in which direction that you wanted to go? Because that's of course kind of one of the early decisions that someone has to make as they're getting into trading is, am I a day trader? Am I a swing trader? Do I want to do long term? Or it's a fairly important decision, but it's one they have to make pretty early on.
Yeah, well, I mean, like I mentioned at the beginning, I'd been trying to give this GAN thing a pretty good shot. I'd traded it for, a few years, a couple years. Keeping in mind, I was never like super active, so I might take a couple trades a month, but it was never like I was putting trades on every morning. I was just following a few markets. If I saw an opportunity, I would, attempt to trade it. The more I got into it, the Gann's material, it just kind of seemed a little bit too wishy-washy for me. That's not to say that, it might make sense to other traders who use his methods, but I kind of wanted something that wasn't quite so open to interpretation. It kind of seemed as though like any high or low that formed in hindsight, there was a reason for it. It was very difficult for me, anyway, to see that before it happened. Um, so yeah, I mean, where do I go from here? So what I'd done is I'd essentially taken some of the bits and pieces that I'd picked up over those first few years, and I'd kind of taken it and formed my own method or approach to trading. I'd been trading that for a little while, and then it kind of occurred to me that this is, I can write this out on paper. I can write down, I need to see this, this, and this happen for me to buy. This is how I manage the position. This is how much I risk. I could write that all out on paper, which occurred to me that if I can do that, I could actually, if I had the skill, program that, backtest it, and see how it's performed in the past. So that's, to start off with, I was taking a swing trading approach using methods of Gann. Then I was taking a swing trading approach using methods of my own. And now I've sort of trying to actually quantify those strategies that I've been trading, which is going to bring me into still, I want those strategies to be swing trading, but it's also going to, I will also be focusing on shorter time frames, so intraday strategies as well. So I can see moving forward that I will be still a swing trader as well as an intraday trader when I get to the level of automation.
Okay. So the initial kind of swing approach really just kind of started from that area of Gone that you were interested in, and then what was it that's kind of started to pull you towards the algorithmic trading? Was it just the kind of, I don't know. I think all traders at some level are kind of tech geeks. We all like our computers and our equipment. Was that kind of what it was for you? Is just an interesting challenge, or?
Well, the part that kind of I kind of had this. I hope it's going to be a light bulb moment. It might be a little bit early to tell, but the part, like I said, was when I could actually write out my strategy on paper, and then it occurred to me that I could, if I had the skill, I could actually program that. And I still like to think of myself as reasonably young. If I can spend some time now learning how to program, I have that skill for life. And I think, I like to look at things with the big picture game. And if I can learn how to program and actually backtest strategies, it's going to be beneficial in the long run. Obviously, it's very front end loaded, so there's a lot of work up front before you actually get to the point of live trading an algorithmic strategy. Yeah, did I miss anything there from your question?
I think you covered that pretty well. It was mostly just the what was it that drew it to you, and I think it's really cool because it means that you can put down a set of rules and not have, or potentially not have, your emotions interfering with it as much.
Yeah. Yeah, I mean that was kind of one aspect that did appeal to me about the idea of algorithmic trading, although I just want to mention that that kind of is a little bit of a misconception that a lot of people have, is that with algorithmic trading, or let's just say automated trading, that there is no emotion attached to it. And from the traders I've interviewed and that sort of thing, they will say that that's not really the case, because at any point you do have the ability to switch off your strategy from live trading. You've actually got you can see your strategy trading might go into a 10, 15, 20% drawdown. You've got to have the stomach to be able to sit there and write it out, or you can, let your emotions come into the picture and you can turn it off. So, yeah, but I mean, the part that really appealed to me, and I think this goes back to your question just before, is that with an automated approach, you can trade multiple strategies on multiple time frames on multiple markets. Whereas if you're just a hand trader, and you have to be there to make the decisions to buy and sell, you're very, well, I'm not going to say very limited, but you do have limitations on the number of strategies you can trade, um, and that sort of thing. Whereas if you've got a computer doing it for you, it, you know, it doesn't get tired. It's there 24 hours around the clock. Because if I want to be a day trader, I mean, I focus on Australian and US stocks. So, they both trade at different times. That would require me to have a really strange sleeping pattern, which, I'm not really prepared to do. Plus, I've got other things going on, like, running chat with traders and that sort of thing. So, for me to be a day trader is re- uh, not really realistic for me right now. Going down this path would open those doors and those opportunities.
Okay. I like that. That's it's kind of like leveraging yourself in a way.
100%. Yeah.
Cool. So how, I guess one more question on that topic is like how is it going for you so far? I remember hearing in a previous interview that you'd set a pretty ambitious goal for for getting it set up. What's it starting to look like? Where are you at?
So yeah, I mean, in the early stages of heading in this direction, I did have some pretty ambitious goals, which were probably a little bit naive. Now that I think back on it now, um, so obviously I'm working towards a goal of being able to identify a strategy and get it to a point where it's automated. Um, Obviously, I don't want to just be doing that with one strategy, but obviously you've got to start somewhere. So that'll be my first goal, and then it'll be adding strategies after that point. Where I'm at in terms of progress so far is I'm at a point where okay, just to backtrack a little bit, for me, I decided that I was going to learn an open source programming language, in particular Python. Um, there are other alternatives which are using, a software package or, some other platforms that are available, like TradeStation, AmiBroker. Those are quite popular ones with some people. Um, I I don't know why, but I like the idea of an open source programming language because there is no limit, or very few limitations. It's also can be ported into a bunch of different places. Whereas if you're coding in something like TradeStation, you are restricted by the limitations of that platform. And then if you want to use that code anywhere else, it has to be rewritten to a different language to be used elsewhere. Um, so sorry, I've forgotten the original question.
It was just how's the progress going so far? So
Yeah,
you were
yeah,
starting to
that's
kind of lay
right.
the foundation of you'd picked Python and you were starting to work towards putting together your first script.
Got it. So So yeah, I've been really just putting in the work, learning Python. Obviously, I have no prior programming language. I do have some experience with code, HTML and CSS, having done web design work in the past. But this was very different, and I didn't pick it up as quickly as I thought I might have. But I my confidence, like actually writing in Python, just being able to code is definitely increased, and I feel like I am making some good headway now. I have actually got to a point where I can actually code a strategy or an algorithm with all the functionality for position sizing, risk management, um, parameters to buy and sell, and that type of thing, what markets to focus on, and actually be able to back test that algorithm. And if I wanted to, I could just hit the button to live trade it. But that's kind of the level I'm at. The algorithms that I've coded so far, I mean, they are reasonably basic, but it's a good building block to go from. Now it's kind of more of a matter of actually being able to identify a strategy that I think is worthwhile live trading, and then actually probably analyze it a lot further than just the matter of running a back test and spitting out some numbers. I actually want to analyze it a lot further. So that's kind of where I'm at. Obviously, that's my main focus this year, being 2016, is to get something up and running.
Okay. That's very cool. I mean, I've also played with trying to learn Python at one point, and got about as far as I think I made like a simple like dice rolling program or something.
Okay,
Kind
yeah,
of one of the
yeah.
little beginner lessons. It was fun, but it's definitely it takes a while to really get used to it. As I also have a little bit of history with HTML and CSS, and we probably would have been a lot better off going with something JavaScript based, but
No doubt.
but yeah, it is really fun, and it's a fun project, especially if you want to, I guess, take on some sort of a project still within the trading sector, but not directly, I guess, directly trading at first, building up to it.
Mm.
So whole nother I guess set of things to learn in addition to the trading.
Exactly, yeah. And I mean, it's with an open source programming language, it's it can be used obviously not just in the trading domain. So, who knows where else it might come in handy throughout life, because you can apply it to many applications.
Absolutely. So I think I'll kind of let a little bit of the pressure off, or the focus off of you just a little bit. So you've mentioned Chat with Traders a couple times. This is a weekly podcast with various successful traders around the world, really. And how long have you been doing it for?
So we've just ticked over 1 year. We actually launched. It was the 15th of January, 2015. So we've just crossed our 1 year anniversary recently.
Okay. So what was it that kind of led you in the direction of doing that?
Yes, that's a really good question. Why I started it, I guess there was a few reasons. So one of the biggest ones was I've always known that if you want to really learn something and become great at something, you need to learn from those who are perhaps where you want to be, or at least further ahead than where you currently are. So I kind of looked around me and I saw that no one in my circle, being my family, friends, anyone that I knew, had any involvement or interest with financial markets, investing, trading, nothing. So I was kind of like a lone wolf, I guess you could call it, trying to learn how to trade on my own. Obviously, I had some study material here, which I was pulling apart, but I couldn't speak with anyone. There was no one who I could really talk to about it. Um, so it was kind of like the, the podcast that I wanted to listen to. I've always been a fan of podcasts. I've always learned a lot myself from actually just listening to podcasts. So that was kind of my motive for starting the podcast. Is anyone who's heard me, give my story in the past is probably sick of hearing this, but I use the analogy: if you want to be a mechanic, you would hang around with people who talk about cars, who work on cars, love cars, and quite possibly are mechanics themselves. I was here trying to be a trader, and I didn't know anyone else. So starting the podcast gave me a platform and, I guess, an excuse or a reason to talk to some of these guys I wish I had access to. And yeah, I mean, it's essentially just sort of snowballed from there.
Cool.
And I mean, I should add, I knew that there was others in a similar situation, you know what I mean, who would probably benefit from hearing this sort of thing. So while it kind of sounds like I started it for selfish reasons, I knew that there would be other people who would find value in actually getting insight from other traders.
Sure. And then at the end of the day, you could make the argument that most successful businesses were created because the owner saw a need of their own that they wanted to try and fill. So it makes perfect
100%.
sense.
Yeah. Yeah.
So one of the things that I found really, really interesting, and thought it was actually the biggest thing that really made me want to interview you for this is that at the end of the day, you basically have every major trader out there giving you their best advice. You're the student. You're learning from all these different people. What's that like? How has that kind of affected you and your own learning as you went along?
Yeah, I mean, it's definitely an incredible opportunity, and I'm extremely grateful to have that opportunity to speak with everyone I do. I mean, I just before we did this call, I wrapped up an interview with Peter Tuchman, who is the most photographed man on Wall Street. If you might not know the name, but if you saw a picture, you would know who he was. He kind of looks like Albert Einstein. Anyway, we spoke for well over an hour. Like it's incredible to have that opportunity. He's just ticked over 30 years as a broker on the floor of the New York Stock Exchange. So he had a lot of incredible insight to share. But I mean, just overall, being able to speak with so many traders from different coming to the market from different angles and with different approaches. It's just, I think it's opened my eyes up a lot to things you might be unaware of. And I think it's very important to know how other players are interacting with the market because it's sort of like I was in my early stages. So I came to the market, all I knew was Gann's approach. And I don't like to keep referencing him, but anyway, that's all I knew. And I was very conscious not to, jump around and try and chase some holy grail that didn't exist. So I just had the blinkers on. I was just focusing on that. And I think with the podcast, because I interview quite a wide range of traders, it's exposed me to a lot of things that I previously would probably be unaware of. And I think it's important to have a good understanding of what's going on, on different time frames as different players. It's important to know what's going on in the market besides your approach. What players, who are you competing against? Just that sort of thing. I don't know if that really was very clear, but I think you know where I'm headed with it.
Sure. Yeah, it's important to kind of have the big overall view. If you specialize in corn, you should probably still pay attention to what oil is doing and what the major trucking companies are doing. All these other things that are still going to affect the market that you're in, but maybe not immediately on the same day or something.
Yeah, and I mean that's something that came up just in a recent episode, was talking about how sort of global markets are correlated in some sense. And I mean that's something that you might not know about or be aware of, especially if you're newer to trading. So with every conversation, there's new topics that are brought up and discussed, and I think it's valuable to have a well-rounded knowledge base.
Is it overwhelming?
No, I don't think so.
I mean,
It's a good question.
I could see how having so many different people to kind of be like analysis by paralysis, where you just don't know
Well,
which direction to look at.
yeah, I mean, one of the things which is really great is that you often hear common themes coming up, and I mean, if someone's saying something similar to what someone else has been preaching, then obviously in my eyes or in my mind, that must be very important. So I mean, one of the common things that constantly comes up is and it's almost become cliche, is that you need to find a trading approach that fits your personality. I mean, that's just one example, but that comes up from a trader who might be an intraday trader in London markets, and I don't know, an oil trader. They're going to say similar things. So I think in that regards, it's beneficial to really get that, drive that home.
Sure, and that makes sense. So in a previous conversation, I think it was actually our very first conversation that we had, you had mentioned about how there wasn't any maybe particularly huge lesson that you took away from any one person, but more of a lot of kind of subtle things as a whole from the group. What can you kind of elaborate on that a little bit?
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, yeah. I mean, one of the things which I've spoken about in the past, which was kind of like a trigger word, I guess you could call it, which kind of made me rethink about how I viewed trading. And that was an interview with Mike Bellafiore of S&B Capital, and he talked about having to have a sustainable approach. And I just really like that word. I think that word was key. And I mean, what that what that says to me, which has also been reinforced by other people, other traders that I've interviewed, is that it's not about winning on one big trade. It's about grinding out profits over a long period of time. So single trades don't matter. What matters is having a group of trades. It's like it's like analyzing any type of data. You need to have a large enough data sample to determine how something has performed. So yeah, sustainability is very key. Um, and I've got here, I made a couple notes before we jumped on the call. So I mean, traders should seek consistency, not lotto tickets. So I mean, that's one example. Tom Baso, who I interviewed, was also featured in Jack Schwager's Market Wizards. He has a brilliant one-liner, and I don't even know if he said this during the recording. It might have been afterwards. But he said, you've got to ask yourself, is that someone's opinion or is that fact? And I mean, really broken it down like that, whether it's black and white, I think is really valuable. And it's just something to be mindful of. I mean, obviously you can't apply that to everything, but, especially in the media, a lot of the things you hear, is that someone's opinion or is that actually a fact? And if it's a fact, then it can probably be proved with, data to some degree. So I mean, those are just two examples, but yeah, often I find from speaking with a lot of traders that there's just subtle things they'll say or words they'll use in their language, which I find sometimes just make things click and a little light bulb will go off in your head. So yeah.
Sure. And how do you think that it's kind of influenced you the most, like in your own trading or in your own growth as a trader by being able to talk to all these different people?
That's a really good question and a little difficult to answer. Um, yeah, I'm not sure how I'd best answer that. I'm trying to think. How has it changed my trading? Um, I'm not sure. I'm not sure. How has it changed my trading? I mean, for me to get onto the idea of algorithmic trading, I mean, this is just one example. For
Sure.
me to get onto the idea of algorithmic trading, I didn't even know that existed before the start of 2015 when I started the podcast. I wasn't even aware that those sorts of things existed. So I mean, that's one way how it's exposed me to more ideas and more opportunity. Um, yeah, I don't know. I don't have an awesome answer for this question. I'm sorry.
That's fine. I think you actually kind of touched on it right there, that it may not be any particular strategy or like some secret that you learned, but really it's just kind of been the macro level of just kind of opening up your world as to what else is out there.
Yeah, 100%. It's just having a well-rounded knowledge base, I think.
So, of course, most people who will be watching this don't have some other kind of platform like yours that they can go and interview all the top traders in the world. What do you think that somebody watching could do to get some similar level of interaction or some similar level of education?
Yeah. So, I mean, the first thing I would recommend is getting on Twitter. Like Twitter is such an awesome resource for connecting with other traders. If you're a trader and you're not on Twitter, um, you probably should. I think I think Twitter is awesome. I really rate it. I mean, that's the social platform that I spend the most time on. There's plenty of really active traders on there. They sharing screenshots of opportunities they're seeing. Obviously you got to pick and choose, who you follow and who you don't follow and that sort of thing. And you can even, create lists on Twitter, so you could put, all your low float day traders in one list, and you can look at, guys who are trading macro events in another list. Like, it's a really cool resource. So Twitter is a big one. And yeah, I mean, most people are really open to speaking with you. So if you tweet someone, hopefully, in most cases, they'll tweet you back. And you can get access to pretty much everyone I've interviewed on Twitter, at least. Another option is, if you did want access to the guys who I've interviewed, there's a comments section underneath every interview. And I always encourage, well, not always, but I often encourage listeners to leave questions in the comments area, because it's a way to get further interaction. And if there's anything that was in the interview which didn't make sense, or you want to be expanded on a little further, leave a question in the comments area, and then I try and get the guests to actually respond to the comments. So yeah, I mean, there's a bunch of ways. It's just about making connections, essentially.
Sure. And actually, I think it's kind of funny that you mentioned Twitter. That was the very first thing I did. I got on Twitter and I created a list of about 100 people that I at least perceived to be the more authoritative and reliable traders on there. Which actually, yeah, I guess, kind of like brings me to the question of how do you cut through the noise? It's kind of like opening up a fire hydrant where you just have information being blasted at you from every direction.
Yeah. So what I'd suggest to start with is take advantage of the free resources that are available online. Like, there's so much for free online. So the only thing you're paying with is your time. You don't have to open your wallet or anything. There's a lot of really good free resources around. If you find something that speaks to you, something that resonates with you, like something in particular, for me, that was algorithmic trading. For someone listening, maybe that's, I don't know, being a day trader of crude oil, whatever it may be. Find information on it, then, just pursue that avenue further. Once you find something that really speaks with you, then push further and just get to find out as much information as you can around that particular topic, and just really try and specialize in it, essentially. There's a lot of good resources. Obviously there's some pretty high ticket courses in that are available online. I kind of think before doing anything like that, try and find a book on the subject. Books are always very affordable, $20-30 max usually. Very good place to start. A book, and then, if you feel like you need to take it further, then, there's a lot of online courses that are available. For me, I mean, a lot of the material I've been researching over the last 6 months has more been around programming, and obviously there's a bunch of really great free resources online for that. So that's where I've been focusing a lot of my energy and time. But yeah, to summarize, take advantage of the free resources. If you find something that really appeals to you, pursue it further. Try and get as much info as you can. Get a book on it. If you need to take some sort of course following that, then it's probably the right thing to do.
I love it. You're the first person that said just go get a book so far. I had one person say go to the library, but you're probably the first person that's just straight up said, you know what, books are cheap. You don't need to go to find some expensive educator. You don't need to make it complicated. There's a ton of resources out there.
Yeah, absolutely.
And I'm not even going to go into the how do you pick the right educator, because that's a whole nother a whole nother subject. I think though what what I will go to though is, what do you think is just the best piece of advice that you wish someone had given you right from the beginning?
Well, I could jokingly say, don't catch falling knives. That's something I have paid the price for. And when it was said to me, it kind of it stuck with me. But on a slightly more serious note, probably one thing I wish I had known a lot earlier is to be consistent in what you do and do not take into consideration for making a trade. So there's so many variables out there. There's so many indicators. Just so much information that you could take into consideration that could influence your trading decisions. This is the way I feel just personally, is you need to have a cutoff point. You need to say that I'm going to factor these 5 things into my trading decisions. If those 5 things have the green light, then, it's probably something you should pursue and enter a position. But yeah, at some point you have to decide what you are going to factor in and what you're not going to factor in to your trading decisions. And the reason why I feel like that's so important is because if you're taking every trade for a different reason, there's no consistency and it's very difficult to track what's working for you and what's not working for you. So that's probably the biggest thing, which would have probably saved me a bit more. Not that I've blown up any accounts, but probably, saved me a few losing trades over the years. And it's also going to help you fast track your progress. I'd also just throw in the mix there, journal. So keep a record of your trades. Write down your entry, your exit, your reasons for taking the trade, how you felt during the trade, what went good, what went bad. You need something that you can reflect on and go over and analyze and try to learn and improve from. If you're just taking a trade here, a trade there, depending on how frequently you trade, if you're a day trader, you might take 30 trades in a week. You're not going to remember how you felt every day, what your overall performance was, your reasons for doing certain actions. So in that regard, I think a journal is very important also.
I love it. I think that actually is a kind of a good place to start kind of wrapping up here. I've got one more question that I think leads off of that pretty well.
Right.
So in another interview that you did, another reverse interview actually, you and Zach Hurwitz were talking about the four stages of a trader's development. And I don't know if do you remember the quote I'm thinking about?
I do. It goes
Exactly.
something along the lines of this is from Zach, and anyone who's spoken or heard Zach speak knows he's full of analogies. Great ones, I should add. But okay, so traders usually, I think you may have it in front of you there, but traders usually start off, they have a little bit of beginner's luck, lose money, don't know why. Then they're still losing money, but they start to realize why, start to understand why they're losing money, which is the third stage. And then fourth stage being start to see some consistency and they make money and now they know why. So just to summarize, make money, don't know why, lose money, don't know why, lose money, know why, make money, know why. I think I got that right.
Yep,
I'd be disappointed if I stuffed that up.
Yep, that was it exactly. So my question based on that is, what do you think is the biggest difference between the first two stages and the second two stages?
Oh, that's a tricky question. Yeah, I mean, this is actually something that came up the other week. I think when you first come into the markets, you don't know much. You know very little. You might know a couple things and you feel good about just trading off those few things. And over time, as you learn more and that sort of thing, I think we kind of have a natural tendency to overcomplicate things. I think that's probably one reason why traders sometimes make money, straight out of the gate and then begin to lose money, is because, as time goes on, we learn more and we want to just use everything and we want to we just have a natural tendency to overcomplicate things. I mean, I think it's very difficult to trade something that's simple because you feel like, well, this is too simple for me to make this much money off. Like, it has to be more complex, and it's not always the case. So yeah, and then I think going into the next part of the last two phases is obviously a lot of time, like a lot of time, a lot of study, a lot of perseverance, and eventually things start to click. Things are slowly clicking for me. I can't say that I've reached a level that I'm satisfied with, but that's what I'm gunning for. So yeah, from my understanding, I think those are probably the things that separate those sides of the fence.
Okay. So that it makes a lot of sense to me. So I believe you.
So awesome. Well, glad I have
um,
someone on my side.
so just kind of one last one here to really wrap things up. What do you think separates a trader who will become successful from those who either just give up, fail, or never even get started?
Um, yeah, okay. So I think a lot of traders from I speak to a lot of traders. I get emails quite frequently from listeners of the podcast and that sort of thing. I often hear about their challenges and that sort of thing. I think a lot of traders try to go big too bit go stumbled that. Let's try again. A lot of traders try to go too big too soon. I think at in the early stages, it's just about achieving some type of consistency. Once you have that, then you can think about, potentially scaling up. But I think a lot of traders are just trying to hit big wins straight away. You need to understand that it's going to take years to reach. I mean, this is a generalization. I mean, some people pick it up in the first year, some people pick it up in 3, others are 5 years. It varies between everyone, but it really does take a lot of perseverance. You've got to get used to losing. That's just part of it, and that kind of goes against what we're kind of programmed to believe, that losing is bad. And obviously you want to be making money in the long run, but you have to take losses to get to that point. And I think that requires a big shift in your mindset. So, I mean, those are probably some reasons. There's definitely a lot of reasons why traders never, quote unquote, make it.
All right. Cool. So I guess that kind of wraps things up here. To kind of finish things up, what's a good way for people to follow up with you? And is there anything else that you'd like to kind of throw in before we wrap up?
Yeah, for sure. So, I mean, if anyone wants to check out the Chat with Traders podcast, they can just go to chatwithtraders.com. Very straightforward. The podcast, every episode can be found there. One new episode comes out every week. It's totally free to listen to, of course. I'm also pretty active on Twitter and always make an effort to respond to everyone on there. So, at Chat with Traders. And we've also got a free ebook on the Chat with Traders website at chatwithtraders.com/17 lessons. And that ebook's titled The One Thing I Wish Someone Would Have Told Me Before I Started Trading. And I actually asked that question to 17 traders, some who I've interviewed on the podcast and also some who haven't featured on the podcast. I got their answers, curated them, put them into an ebook. And you can get that at chatwithtraders.com/17 lessons.
Awesome. Well, hey, thank you so much for coming on and being willing to kind of talk. I know you were a little bit concerned that you're still in the new trader side of things yourself, but I think it was a really valuable interview, and I really love being able to see that side of it as well.
Great. Well, it was a lot of fun, Jacob. So thank you very much, and I hope guys listening at least picked up one or two things that might be valuable. So yeah, again, thank you very much for the opportunity.
Awesome. You're very welcome. You have a great day. I guess it's still kind of morning for you, right?
Yeah, it's just tick lunchtime here, so as soon as we jump off this call, I'm gonna go grab something to eat.
All right, cool. Well, you enjoy.